To be honest, I remember a lot of things about Diane. I guess I've known you my whole life.
People were amazed by Al Pacino and Diane Keaton's special bond for a long time, both in movies and in real life. There was love, happiness, and times that felt almost like magic in their story. But there was more to their relationship than just fame and the spotlight that caused it to end. Fans have been waiting decades to hear the truth from Al Pacino, but now that Diane has died, he is finally telling them. Come with us as we tell this touching and moving story.
Sad death of Diane Keaton in tribute. Diane Keaton died in California on October 11, 2025, at the age of 79.
After that, her family told People magazine the sad news, which was met with heartfelt tributes from friends and co-workers right away. People all over the world started sharing pictures and memorable scenes from her movies to honor the actress who had portrayed intelligence, beauty, and grace like no one else. Leading magazines wrote about her effect and called her an amazing artist whose presence changed how people saw movies. But she was more than just an actor.
She was an inspiration to many people.
Diane worked in show business for almost 60 years and was known for being friendly, creative, and sure of herself, even though she was very famous. She decided to live a quiet life in her later years, and her family didn't tell anyone about her death. A small group of people who loved and admired her work held a quiet memorial service instead of a public one. Millions of people shared their sadness online by sharing memories from her most famous movies, especially the ones that made her famous in the first place. Her roles in Annie Hall and The Godfather were praised over and over again. She was telling everyone of how magical she could make a scene feel. Diane Keaton was more than just a movie star to people all over the world. She added a spark to every movie she worked on and touched the lives of millions of people.
Diane Keaton had a unique charm that made people want to be around her.
Fans, co-stars, and friends all felt sad about her death and remembered how kind, funny, and full of life she was. An old co-star and close friend, Al Pacino, was one of the people who was most affected. People all over Hollywood respected their relationship, not because of rumors, but because they cared about each other and worked together on projects.
Al talked a lot about how she changed his life, on and off screen. There are two types of people, the horrible and the unhappy. The horrible would be like.
Respect kept their friendship strong over the years.
And an understanding that isn't said.
They were very different, but they were just right.
Diane is happy, fun, and full of life. As serious, you are deep and thoughtful.
They worked together to make movie scenes that will always be remembered. Even though they were never married, it was clear how close they were whenever they were seen together.
People didn't just cry as the world said goodbye.
They were proud of her power. In all of her roles, she brought joy, emotion, and sincerity. She showed people how to play with heart.
Diane Keaton's name became a sign of skill, individuality, and classic beauty.
Even when no one is around, her presence continues to move people and leave a mark on every story she touched. Al Pacino's earlier words about her became even more emotional after she died. They turned old memories into a quiet goodbye to someone who had been very important in his life. Close friends and family of Diane Keaton often said that she was honest and never tried to be someone else.
Al Pacino knew this better than anyone else.
Her friends thought that the most beautiful thing about her was how she was. She never cared if she looked beautiful or perfect.
Her only goal was to be honest.
She stood out because she was herself in a world that often praised looks and beauty. And gained the love of many people around the world. When word got out that she had died, honors came in from all over the world. Young players shared pictures of her smiling in the last scene of one of her last movies, which showed how gracefully and bravely she accepted getting older. Diane was still doing the things she loved even though she was in her late 70s. When her last movie came out in 2023, it was a special goodbye for fans who had been following her work for decades. People who liked her knew that it was her last act, which made the movie even more meaningful to them. At the same time, Al Pacino, who was in his mid-80s at the time, showed up less often. His health was slowly getting worse, so he only agreed to short talks. In one of these times, not long before Diane died, he spoke about her with deep respect and a quiet sadness. He talked about how special she was and how no one else could ever be like her. That message was the last thing he said in public about her.
Yes, you do. What a stupid thing to say, right? You say it, right?
A quiet but strong goodbye before everyone found out she had died. After Diane died, friends and the media talked about how close she was to Al and how that bond had lasted for more than 50 years. People were interested in the quiet friendship that had shaped their lives and jobs so much again. Their trip together began many years ago in East Harlem, at a small, cozy restaurant where they met the cast of an old movie. What started out as a simple friendship would become one of the most famous teams in Hollywood, praised for both its sincerity and its skill. People all over the world seem to remember the first time Diane met Al. They talked about how a simple audition turned into decades of working together, respecting each other, and being happy together. Watch on to find out everything about this love story. A link that began in silence. Hollywood was going through a lot of change in the early 1970s. Movie makers were looking for players who looked and felt real because the days of perfect, glamorous stars were coming to an end. It was during this shift that work on The Godfather began. Francis Coppola was a young, eager director who was only in his 30s but already had a lot of big ideas. He saw something unique in Al Pacino, who was a quiet actor with a deep passion that other people didn't notice at first. But the people in charge at Paramount didn't like his idea. Some people said Al was too short and too quiet, and not well known enough to be the star of such a big movie. Coppola wouldn't give up, though. He thought Al had the quiet strength and emotional depth to bring Michael Corleone to life. No matter what the cost, he was ready to fight for his choice. At the same time, Coppola started looking for someone to play Kay Adams, the sweet and innocent woman who would balance out Michael's sadness. It was that search that led him to Diane Keaton, a young girl who had just left Broadway. There was something about her that made her stand out from other actresses, even though she was new to the movie business. Coppola knew right away that having her in the story would make it more tender and fun, even though it was about crime and power. She was in her early 20s and had no idea that an interview would make her whole life different. They had to act out a love scene together in a small, dimly lit bar, which is where she met Al for the first time. At first, the meeting was awkward. The two young actors were quiet and nervous, and they were trying to get along in just a few minutes. Diane thought back to how little Al spoke at that time. He did nothing but sit there, with a faint cloud of cigarette smoke around him. Still, there was something about his silence that caught her attention right away. Could make me tell the truth. That silence told her more than any words could. Coppola later said that Diane's test was one she would never forget. As Kay Adams, the only person who could make Michael seem like a real person again, she did more than just play. Even at that early stage, it was clear that Diane and Al had something in common. It was real, honest, and very moving, just what the story needed. The company still didn't trust Coppola's choices, even after all of this. They told him that he should replace Al with a more well-known character so that more tickets would be sold. Coppola wouldn't give up, though. Even though it meant losing his job, he stood firm because he was sure that the decisions he was making were the right ones. That determination would soon turn out to be the choice that would forever change not only his career but also the history of movies. In New York in March 1971, filming for The Godfather began for real. Diane and Al's first scene together was at Connie Corleone's wedding. It was also their first day on set and their first time seeing each other on screen. After that, the months went by slowly. The most interesting part of her life came next, when fate gave them one last scene together. The movie was filmed for 8 long, hard months. It was finally finished in August of that year and came out the following spring. The Godfather changed movies forever when it came out in theaters. Some people saw Al Pacino as the new model of a quiet but strong hero, and Diane won people over with her soft, emotional performance as Kay Adams. Reviewers said they both seemed so real and like they had a real relationship on screen that it was hard to believe they were actors. As word of the movie's popularity spread around the world, Diane and Al began to show up at events and ads together. Still, neither one let the public see what was going on in their personal lives. Diane only told Al once that he wanted to meet her for dinner at a small, quiet place near Central Park after the movie's premiere. That night was the first time they really let their guard down around each other. She thought he was different in some way. He wasn't trying to be funny or impress anyone. He was just himself. That made him stand out. The success of The Godfather changed both of their lives in big ways. The movie not only changed the gangster genre, but it also put them in the middle of Hollywood in 1970. Soon, Al was nominated for an Academy Award, and Diane quickly became one of the actresses that new and risk-taking directors wanted the most. When they came out of that movie together, they weren't just stars, they were also two people who would always be connected by a quiet, unseen bond that started when the cameras started rolling. Diane Keaton and Al Pacino's fame took them to great heights, but it also brought them problems that tested their hearts in a quiet way. The bright lights that used to shine on them started to make long shadows, and as their fame grew, so did the heavy silence that comes with it. Their friendship began on movie sets and grew stronger as they shared ideas. It slowly became more personal and tender. After The Godfather Part 3 did well, their relationship turned into a real love story. They started to spend more time together away from the cameras. They went to openings and other important events together, but they were always careful to keep their relationship quiet. Even though they were both huge stars in their time, they were very different people. Diane was friendly and open, while Al was quiet and thought things over. Their differences made them interesting and attractive at the same time. Diane thought that love was never easy, and their partnership showed that. Deep and sensitive, but also hard to deal with when the public is looking at you. After a few years, Diane's job took a huge leap forward. Annie Hall came out in theaters in 1977 and became a worldwide hit right away. Her natural performance, easy sense of humor, and natural charm made her the new face of modern women. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress for the role, and all of a sudden she became a famous person. Everyone liked her style, which was easygoing, sure of itself, and real. She was seen as smart, independent, artsy, and easy to talk to by strangers. She was honest about women's rights in the movie business when she talked to reporters. Could make me tell the truth. Thought that they didn't have to follow male-driven ways to be successful. At the same time, Al Pacino was making his own famous road. For his part in Dog Day Afternoon, he showed the world a side of him that was both angry and open. Soon after, Scarface made him the most powerful, intense, and changing movie character of the 1980s. They were both at the top of their jobs, shining like stars in their own worlds. But they would always be linked by a bond that fame could never quite explain. A lot of reviewers saw Al Pacino as a representation of America's restless spirit after the war, a man who was proud, strong, and rebellious, but also lost in himself. There was a lot more to his relationship with Diane Keaton than just love. As artists, they had a strong link that only they could understand. Their creative energy always seemed to flow in the same direction, even though they lived in very different worlds. With all the attention on them, they did their best to keep what they had. Diane could often be seen at Al's practices, and sometimes she would just wait backstage and watch him work. Friends remembered that the two of them never put on a show. They liked being alone and talking for hours about movies, the theater, and the little things in life that were important. But as the years went by, they started to live in different ways while being famous. Diane liked talks and talking about her feelings in an honest way, but Al became more private and liked being alone more than being talked to. They kept dating, but over time, it became fragile, like a beautiful flower that needs special care to stay alive. Diane started to work on smaller, more personal film projects, while Al focused on big company movies. They ran into each other again when Diane worked with Warren Beatty on Reds. Rumors started to spread that Al was jealous. Diane played down the reports, saying that they still loved each other and didn't need to call their relationship what it was. By the late 1980s, time and space had changed them in a quiet way. Their daily lives were very different now. Diane mostly lived in Los Angeles, where she did a lot of stage work and even thought about becoming a director. Al stayed in New York and worked hard on Broadway. He didn't go out in public very often. They still ran into each other from time to time at film festivals, award shows, or behind the scenes of talk shows. But when talks got personal, both of them politely avoided the subject. There was no anger or sorrow between them, there was only calm respect. They both knew that the reason they were no longer together wasn't a lack of love. The demanding world they lived in and their fame had slowly split the path they used to walk together into two different roads. Still, as the years went by, it seemed like their lives kept going around and around each other like two stars in the same sky. In a unique place. A place where the man is pleased. There is a space between them that makes them feel close but not close enough to meet. And just when everyone thought their story was over, fate intervened again and brought Diane and Al back together. It was Francis Ford Coppola's goal with The Godfather Part 3 to bring back the main cast and finish the story properly after it had begun almost 20 years before. Diane Keaton and Al Pacino both decided to come back, even though they were no longer dating. This gave everyone a chance to see a different side of their story.
the last time of everything. Late in 1989, filming began in Rome and then moved to New York for the inner scenes. Diane stayed her warm, happy self on set and was friendly with everyone she met. Al, on the other hand, stayed quiet and thoughtful. They didn't talk much behind closed doors, but when the cameras were rolling, their bond was natural and strong. Diane later said that the meeting was both beautiful and emotional. Not only did their characters' tangled past show and how they felt about Michael and Kay, but so did their own. At that time, Al was having problems in his personal life. He had just become a dad to someone else's child, and Diane was very upset when she heard the news. Even though they kept in touch, their relationship slowly ended after that, leaving a quiet gap that neither of them could fully close. They quickly talked about how their goodbye in the movie mirrored their real-life goodbye, which was a moment that showed both love and loss. In her book, Diane wrote about what had happened in a more direct way. She said that she finally told Al she couldn't wait any longer after years of waiting for them to take their relationship to the next level. The choice wasn't made out of the blue, it was made after almost 20 years of love, patience, and doubt. Two people going at different speeds, one wants to stay put, while the other is afraid of being tied down. Francis Ford Coppola once said that the whole crew went silent while they were shooting Michael and Kay's last scene together. There wasn't a need for help or talk. Their eyes were the only thing that held their past. Many people who saw that thought Diane and Al still loved each other because of how real their feelings were. But the director knew that what they were seeing wasn't a long-lasting relationship. It was a real and last goodbye. When filming was over in the middle of 1990, they went their different ways again. Began to focus on starting her own small family and enjoying a more private, quiet life. Al, on the other hand, stayed truly committed to his art and hid his feelings. He carried memories and wounds that no one else could fully understand. Then there was more to their love story that everyone needed to know. Scandals that caused them to break up. In the 1970s, when both of their careers were at their peak, Al Pacino and Diane Keaton's friendship was more important than anyone knew. Al was having problems in his personal life that were getting in the way of their relationship in ways that neither of them could have predicted. When he became famous after The Godfather, he had to deal with stress, late nights, and a way of life that made it hard to tell the difference between work and play. At that point, he became deeply dependent on booze, and there were times when he would forget whole chunks of time. It was a time of great music, chaos, and quiet. That kind of silence that made space grow over time, even when love was still there. Diane, on the other hand, was stable, full of life, and grounded. Al was torn between his love of playing and the bad things that can happen when you're famous. She wanted to hold him together. Even though they loved each other, things were going too quickly in their lives. Hollywood was always keeping an eye on them, and reports would often get them in the news. Between films and afterward, Al was linked to other actresses, people he shared stages or screens with. There was a lack of trust between them, even though Diane never said anything about it in public. Diane herself made news when she worked closely with Warren Beatty at the same time, telling stories that made people feel confused and jealous. Both of them really did have a lot of things going on around them that made it hard to keep what they had safe. Each new news story or headline put up an imaginary wall between them. Around the middle of the 1980s, there was another storm. Soon after Revolution came out, Al's career took a sudden turn for the worse. It was one of his biggest failures. Both critics and audiences didn't like it, so he started to doubt his decisions and pulled away from public life. Being let down was so painful that he stopped making movies for a while. Diane had always been a quiet friend of his, but she had to stand back and watch as he became more alone. In the meantime, her work kept going up, giving her roles that made her laugh, gave her confidence, and showed how independent she was. George is in line to get his free turkey, but he passes out. But success and quiet don't usually go together. Al pulled away more and more as she did well, and the tie that used to hold them together started to weaken. One incident or fight didn't bring them to an end. It was everything put together. It hurts to be alone, drink too much, hear rumors, make commitments, and have jobs. Different ways of moving. And now, after all these years, Al chose to tell more people about their friendship. Watch on to find out what happened. Al Pacino's last words: when Diane Keaton finished filming The Godfather Part 3, she chose to stop playing roles with strong emotions and focus on finding peace in her own life. She wanted a beat that was slower and had more meaning. Not at all like the heavy roles she had played before. She eventually decided to adopt 2 kids, a daughter named Dexter in 1996 and a boy named Duke in 2001. She changed a lot after she became a mother. It wasn't about finding a new love, but about making her own family and finding her meaning in life. She created a warm and happy world for herself as a mother, which changed the way she thought about love and happiness. Over the years, she went back to acting, but this time in parts that showed how mature, funny, and strong she was. She was nominated for another Oscar for her role in Marvin's Room, which showed that people were still moved by her emotional depth. Later, her part in Something's Gotta Give showed everyone why they loved her so much. It was like seeing her real self on film, playing a woman who was strong, independent, and kind. And wanting to meet. Diane's charm and wit were still there in movies like The Family Stone, Because I Said So, and Book Club, even though she was now in her 60s. Many critics praised her for having a successful career without any competition or trouble. She didn't want attention or fame. Instead, her skill, honesty, and grace won her respect that would last. Her work became a quiet example of how to be strong and true to yourself, showing that you found peace of mind both on and off screen. Yes, that's right. But, hey, let's just go somewhere. Where are all the men? Let's do it. Diane settled down and became a mother, while Al Pacino moved into the 1990s and reached a new level in his work. His well-known part in Scent of a Woman finally won him his first Academy Award, proving that he is one of the best players in Hollywood. As time went on, he kept shining in strong movies like Heat, The Insider, and The Devil's Advocate, showing that he could handle any part. As Hollywood changed and new stars came up, kept his own space, and people respected how hard he worked at his craft. But when he wasn't in the public eye, his private life stayed quiet and private. Al had 3 children. 2 of his children, Anton and Olivia, are twins and were born to Beverly D'Angelo and Nor Alfala. People who knew him well knew that he was serious and private, even though he didn't talk much about his personal life. Even though his career was roaring with success, he seemed to prefer the quiet behind the scenes. He found a balance between the famed artistry of his work and the kindness of being a father. Al Pacino had been in a lot of relationships over the course of his life, but he never got married. A lot of people said that he seemed to have everything a guy could want. You want fame, wealth, and respect. But when it came to love that would last, it always got away. It had stories about his hard youth in the Bronx, his early years in theater when he barely had enough money to live, and the strange feeling of emptiness that sometimes came after success. What really moved people? Those times when he wrote about Diane Keaton. He had met a lot of people, but she was the only one who stood out as being clearly soft. He said that Diane was the one who told him to take a chance when his career was at its worst, after the movie Revolution had failed and left him almost broke. He got him to agree to be in Sea of Love, which not only made him famous again but also gave him faith in himself again. Not many people knew that part of his story, and it showed how important her faith was to him. Al also talked about a memory from when they worked together on The Godfather. He talked about a simple night they spent together after shooting that stuck with him for years. He said that moment made him realize Diane was truly unique and someone he would never forget, no matter how much time went by. As soon as Penguin Press put out Sonny Boy, it was one of the most talked about books in the movie world. Both readers and reviewers liked how honest and emotional it was. There was more to the book than just his work. It was a portrait of a man who had lived a full life, made many mistakes, and learned to handle love and death with grace. Al Pacino showed not only how great an actor he was, but also how quiet a man's heart was when he finally let everyone see who he really was. A lot of people who saw Sonny Boy think that the most moving part was when Al Pacino wrote about Diane Keaton. That part seemed to be the heart of the book. It was where he finally admitted that some people and events in his life were out of his reach. They were friends with Diane even after they broke up, and that relationship lasted for years. They were sometimes seen together at honors and film events, and they always greeted each other with a quiet kiss. All the way up in the front row, Al was there when Diane got her Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Film Institute in 2024. As she walked up to the stage, he stood up and gave her a heartfelt applause. People later asked him about her, and his short but emotional answer showed that his feelings for her had never really gone away. That evening was the last time they were seen together in public. The world lost Diane Keaton the next year. Died peacefully in California, with love and respect around them. For Sonny Boy, things got better after she died. Many people shared the pages that Al had written about her, as if his words were his quiet goodbye, the kind that didn't need to be said out loud. What do you think about AL's message now? Do you think it brought the old love story back to life? Write about it in the space below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to get more exciting news about your favorite stars.